One thing that's always I've always asked is within the story, is part 5 actually canon in Jason Lives, or are we starting with Tommy at the beginning of part 6, picking up just from the events of part 4, or are we is this actually the Tommy character from part 5 as well?
Uh, Good question. It literally is kind of a hybrid of both things. I Part of me wanted to kind of deny five and say that he was killed and now he went into an institution, but we don't really know that till he's driving in the beginning, and he said if they knew what we're doing, they'd block us up that and throw away the key or whatever the Hawes
Right.
character says. um, at the same time, if you had seen the other one and you knew he was in an institution, then it is sort of a continuation that they got out and now Tommy's doing what he wants to do. And it's just he doesn't look as as John Shepard played him,
Right.
like freaked and it looked like he's half out of his mind. So I wanted it so that it kind of worked either way. And
That was my takeaway as a viewer, is that it does work both ways. It's kind of like almost like choose your own script. Do you want this just to be a follow-up of part 4? Or if you are a part 5 fan, then it fits also because there's nothing in the dialogue there that stops that from being part 5 Tommy as well. So it's kind of just like, I guess, up to the viewer to be like,
yeah,
which path do you choose? Because they both make sense. So um okay. Um Tommy's friend Haas,
yeah,
will his body ever be found? Because like he drops into Jason's grave, and I believe the caretaker then
covers it up.
like, will there be justice for like Austin? you know, his
That's
poor
a good
parents,
question.
somebody.
Uh,
I hope Tommy at the end, I hope him and Megan don't
well,
forget
the
about Haas.
I hinted that there was something wrong when I had the scene with his father, because his when his father was looking down at Jason's grave, the way he was looking at is that he sensed
Mm,
that that's not Jason down there, and then it went from his face to dissolving to the lake, and so that now we see where almost like he could be psychically connecting to where he actually
mhm.
is. Since we don't have that, it sort of is like that. Okay, he got buried, and as far as they were concerned, that's an empty grave.
Yeah,
But obviously, I would think Hawes's family would probably
because like
want to get a hold of Tommy or the Institute and find out what happened to him, and then
because
yeah, they.
Haas at the beginning is basically just being a great friend, and he's not rewarded for being a great friend,
I
but he's
know.
coming along with Tommy. He's supportive, and then just that happens to him. It's always
Yeah,
sad, and you think about his body not being found.
yeah, he was
Um,
like my Salminio character from Rebel Without a Cause. He was there
mm,
behind James Dean, and he really supportive and stuff, and kind of sensitive and things. Then obviously getting uh, the guy from Welcome Back, Cotter.
oh
It
yeah,
it
much better.
added, for those people who were fans of that TV show, added a whole nother level. I never watched the TV show, so he came
Mm.
in and he just was amusing and sort of fulfilled that kind of Salminio aspect to what I was thinking, but a little goofier.
Well, a good example too of just like the one of the strengths, of course, being how good the characters are, is that he has a little bit of an arc there because in everything leading up to the moment, he's just scared, scared, scared. But then when the moment hits, he's the one that hits Jason in the back of the head with a shovel. So he does have a
Yeah,
little bit of a quick redemptive arc before meeting his
yeah.
demise. But so
And
uh,
he prophesied, my heart can't take any more of this, and out comes his heart.
yeah, that's good too.
So
Um, some Friday 13th fans feel like because of the beginning here that Tommy Jarvis can be held accountable for all the future deaths in the franchise by bringing Jason back to life.
yeah,
Does Tommy deserve a break, or should we hold him accountable? Because Jason was restfully sleeping and the town had moved on, and here comes Tommy. Should we give Tommy a break, or should we actually blame him for now part 7, part 8, the whole future of Jason, all the dead bodies? Are they on Tommy Jarvis's watch? Or do we cut him some slack?
Well, lem- so in life and to me in the movies, there's those things that decisions are made usually because you're upset, which is what Tommy was, and
Yeah.
he's caused this thing to continue. And in the fan films, like in particular the Vengeance thing that I was
Mm.
involved with,
Yep.
that's all about Tommy coming back and going after Jason again, and uh, Vincent. Uh, when he did Never Hike Alone, he got Tom Matthews in to do the last part of it, and then
Amazing.
continued on. Yeah,
Great stuff.
yeah.
With continuing Tommy's character, was there any do you remember any thought about either bringing back his sister or mentioning his sister? Because like his sister is always sort of untold, left kind of mysterious in terms of, okay, obviously they're very close in part 4, final chapter. Part 5, no real mention of her. Was there any thought to maybe like address like the sister or bring the sister into it?
Not as far as what I was coming up with, and I'm not. To be honest, part of the reason I was told we were not going to go for John Shepard was one of two things. Either he had gotten religious and he didn't want to do one of these, he wanted more money, and that they weren't going to pay him. And it was sort of like maybe she was that way, that whoever, I can't remember the actors who played her, but maybe they couldn't make some deal, because they're the whole thing with
Mm,
these Fridays is you did them as cheap as you could possibly do them. Um, I mean, miraculously, I came in under budget, and I think that's just because I had a really, I don't want to say nasty, but tough production manager who
mm,
made sure if I ordered a crane, it didn't show up. If I ordered a Steadicam, it didn't show up. So I had to come up with some other way to do the shot. But all those were savings, in his budget, and he was getting a bonus if he could bring the thing under. So there's always
mm,
everybody's got their own agenda, that
right.
goes on in these things. So I don't, it didn't come up to me as something that had to be there. And since she wasn't part of the 5,
Yeah.
um, it wasn't kind of in my thought process.
The characters of part 5, I guess there's always been rumors also that like I think even in the Crystal Lake Memories book, it might say that the at least 2 of the actors from part 5 were actually like they had signed a contract to potentially come back for 6. Was there any thought of like bringing back the characters from part 5, or was that never really like on the table? But beyond, let's say John Shepard, like you had Reggie and the woman from part 5 also.
Yeah.
Um, any thought to bring back those characters? Was just kind of like again left kind of its own world.
Again, it's that same thing. Is that I kept saying, when they met with me and they said, okay, the most important thing is to bring back Jason, and the
Mm,
rest of it kind of is up to you. And then when I started saying, well, there are other characters from part 5 or anything, that I don't think we need to do that. And I don't know if that answer was we don't want to pay, because they're going to ask for more money, or they just I didn't come up with an idea that made sense, in terms of what the way I was going. But I always looked at this as that, if Jason's going to return to the thing that's familiar to him, whatever is in there then, which I wanted it to be, camp counselors uh, who already were aware of the past of the place,
mhm,
and they're very aware that Forest Green doesn't change it from being Crystal Lake as much as their parents think it will. And so there was, I guess I didn't really see a space for that to
mm.
happen. So yeah, I really didn't go that way, nor did they say anything about, oh, we want that. I think they were so upset
They
with
would have
part
probably
5.
wanted to distance themselves, get some distance between part 6 and
Yeah,
part 5 anyways, based on the results, right?
yeah, and
Um, do you this is just because he's my favorite character in Jason Lives is actually Sheriff Garris.
yeah.
Um, maybe other fans have given this sentiment, but was there any like draft or any thought, even though we we all love that death scene, of course, that crunch. But was there any like thought to like keep him alive? Just because like it felt like we just wanted Tommy to get that sort of "I told you so" at the end of, "Hey man, I've been telling you the entire movie about Jason," and they never get that moment like afterward. Like, was there ever a thought? Was he always like a dead man on the script, or was there ever a thought to like have Sheriff Garris make it to the end?
It's so funny you should bring this up, because it's literally 2 days ago. I've not communicated with David Kagan in quite a while. He really has no interest in doing the conventions and all the rest of that. But this toy just came out. What are they
Mm.
called? Deaths by Toys, and one of them is Bent Back Sheriff
Oh,
from part 6. And
yes.
so they got this guy with the mustache and stuff, and he's folded in half. That's in this toy thing. So I said, "All right, I got to send this to him." So I sent him the thing, and I said, "If I can trace down where these things are coming from, because so far I haven't been able to find it, just the front of it." I said, "For sure, I'll get you one." And then he wrote back all enthusiastic and stuff, and he said, "Well, if you ever decide that you're gonna do another one, let me know because I'd love to do it."
Wow.
And then out of nowhere, I went, "You know what? You didn't die." I had a brother who had his spine, broken. He continued. What if he bends back and he breaks his spine, but he doesn't die? Where did
Yeah.
we see him die? We see him pass out from the pain.
Yeah.
So I said, why doesn't he have to, why doesn't he end up in a friggin' wheelchair or has to walk with a cane? And he's still going to find Tommy. And at the same time, Jason is coming back also to go after Tommy. And
Yeah.
we have this thing, and I just started making up shit as I was texting. And I
Well,
sent
there's
it to him and he goes, "I'm in, I'm in, I'm in."
it sounds like there's hope. There's hope yet for Sheriff Garris. That's all that we
Yeah.
the fans just want because what's funny is with I first saw the movie as a teenager, and as a teenager, you're completely seeing Megan's perspective and like, oh yeah, the father is like so wrong. And then watching as an adult,
Yeah.
I empathize with everything the sheriff is going through. I'm like, I understand exactly his perspective towards Tommy and his
Yeah.
daughter wanting to keep her safe. So now I see him as like maybe one of the best characters just in horror movies. Just like, and especially, I mean, he's sacrificing himself at the end for his daughter.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just now I really feel as a teen, the first watch, I was like, okay, grumpy old father's gone. Now I'm just like, man,
Yeah.
I wish he made it to the end now. It's like
Yeah.
it's whole
Yeah,
different.
well, again, it's that same thing. Is that David is a great actor, and he never did enough parts to have something really break through. And he ended up being, one of the better acting coaches
Hmm.
that we've had in Los Angeles. And he actually, worked, uh, I guess, years before with Jennifer Cook, played Megan. So
Mhm.
that kind of was an interesting coincidence. But he he brought to it a combination of what my thing. I don't want him to seem like an asshole just to be an asshole, but he really, it's like he's defending the town, he's defending, trying to get things back. It's almost like the mayor in Jaws. He thinks he's doing the right thing, for Amity, but
Yeah,
it was like, we're going, "No, no, you idiot." But when it gets down to it, he gets to that scene where he says, "Chief, my kids were out there too," and
mm,
for that moment there was that empathy for him, which again I think Spielberg was so great with all those characters in there. They just
yeah,
so multidimensional. So it was the same thing here. Is that I wanted to believe him that he was trying to protect his daughter, and he was also trying to protect the town and all the craziness. And Tommy seemed like he was, come on, for Christ's sake, this guy's not
yeah,
alive, and this kid's just doing this shit to try to get his 10 minutes of fame. So yeah, you're not the only one that said, geez, it's he should have been a continuous character, the sheriff and other
yeah,
things. He doesn't get killed. But I
yeah,
had to somehow kind of justify, it just got down to Tommy and Megan there.
yeah.
And the scene, I don't know if you ever saw the TV version where you see the deputy still in the cage in the
Oh,
cell.
there's like a point of view shot of somebody coming towards him
Yeah.
in the. Yeah, I have seen that maybe on YouTube. Yeah, I think the great thing about The Sheriff too is that you see in other horror films too that sometimes, okay, you have your horror villain, but then they force like a kind of a one note human villain. Like there's
Yeah,
always somebody on the human side that's also going against the interests of our heroes. And sometimes like, but when you give that character like empathy and make it a little bit deeper, that the audience appreciates it so much more versus them just being evil for the sake of being evil or anything like that. So
yeah.
so the sheriff was a great example of we definitely feel for him there at the end. Um, the paintball scene, we don't see what happens to the character Roy, the last paintballer, who we see sort of the aftermath, body
Yeah.
parts and things like that. But was there any thought to like show that on screen, whatever that dead scene might have been?
No, I mean, what I tried to do with this is not see every slaughter. I mean, the same thing when uh,
Oh,
what's the name?
Paula,
Uh,
the girl in the cabin.
the woman, yeah. What's her character's name?
Paula.
Paula.
Yeah,
Yes. Um, I didn't want to see Paula get killed. You know, she was too
yeah,
sweet. She was too nice. And, everything kind of leads up to that. And then that scene where the stunt woman threw herself through that window and you see Jason yank her through and the rest of the window comes
yeah.
with her. That to me was violent enough. And then I went so over the top. It was like the elevator in The Shining. How much friggin' blood,
Mm,
there was. It's like there's not that much blood in any human being that could be
well,
painted over those walls like that. And then, it's on the popcorn, it's on all the stuff that,
yeah.
you've seen, and
You left
so,
it up to our imaginations what happened, and that was
yeah,
actually we were like, "Man, what did he do to her for this cabin to li" So, yeah, it was even more effective not seeing it because it's just like it leaves it in your imagination. You're like, "Man, that's another very, likable character again that you're just like"
yeah.
but again, with
And
where Jason Live stands out is that, like, almost every character is likable, and that
yeah.
makes every single death scene, very impactful, I'd say.
And, Roy, also was like a nebbish, and, Whitney and I, unfortunately, I just was part of burying Whitney about 6 months
Mhm.
ago, which was
Yeah.
really heartbreaking because we'd known each other since I got back from Paris, and he was a mime as well, and he was part
Oh,
of the
wow.
mime company, and we been on commercials together, all kinds of stuff. So when I wrote the part, I immediately thought of him and kind of play it in a Buster Keaton fashion, all that
Mhm.
slapstick comedy kind of stuff where he was tripping over shit, and I did not want to see him get killed. I know it's so it was, but
Mm.
wanted to know what happened to him, and of course with the way Vinny's character was when he saw this guy getting so chopped up, and
Yeah.
say this Jarvis kid really takes this serious. Yeah, happy Friday the 13th, and that would always get this huge cheer in the audience. Hearing the title, in there. But yeah, Whitney's character to me again, it was for some people. I figured they're not going to like this. It's so out of tone with the rest of it, but it is
Mhm.
another kind of comedy, and I
Oh, it
had,
is,
witty comedy, I have kid comedy. I tried to put as many different things in there as I possibly could.
a lot of people read into, Jason's moment where he comes into the cabin and it's all the kids, and Jason has the interaction with the young girl, just
Yeah.
sort of looking at her. People are reading into, okay, is he seeing himself there, a young version of himself? Is he just, like, very curious about children? Um, and almost like, the mythology for the fans is almost like Jason, won't harm children.
Mhm.
Was there Are we reading too much in that scene, or is that, like, because some people then say, "Oh, well, Jason's attention then turns to something going outside the cabin, so he has to leave the cabin." So, but is there like an intent there, like that we're supposed to read into that Jason is like sort of just like in awe of her, or he won't harm children, or is it just up to like the viewer interpretation, or how do you see that?
I really, I saw all the possibilities it could mean, so I purposely wanted it to be some people thinking that, you know, it's like it's the first child we've seen him encounter, and there would be that callback to he was a kid at that camp at one point, and
Mhm.
having it be a little girl and having her just being told by Paula, you need to pray. And so she
Yeah.
closes her eyes, and when she opens her eyes, he's gone. And I was like, oh, the magic of prayer,
Yeah.
or the fact that I had like a door slam and Jason hears something, so he could got distracted. But then I've had that question so many times over the last 40 years that I finally decided when I was coming up with an idea for the sequel, I'm going to answer that question,
Oh,
that she is going to be part of. I'm going to give you an answer for what was really going on in that moment between her and him.
okay.
That will be answered in the sequel that I wrote, if I ever can get the damn thing made. Because right
Now,
now I got a big
can we get an update? This is the Jason Never Dies script, right?
yes, yeah.
So I know that uh, you've said in the past that obviously the whole legal proceedings thing kind of made it very difficult to do anything Jason wise. It seems like
Yeah.
is are those things like better now, or is it still kind of like a big thing?
They, I mean, I'll be honest. It's like they don't want to have anything to do with us of the old guard for
Mhm.
whatever reason. I mean, it looks like they're bringing Adrienne King back, because I know initially they were planning on having her when, what's his name was going to do it, Brian Fuller,
Yeah.
he was bringing her in. And then it looked like that wasn't going to happen. And now it looks like they have brought her in some capacity. But when I was writing the script, when I finally, after 30, guess it was 32, 33 years of being asked, are you ever going to do another one? I said, I always had the same thing. As soon as I come up with something that I feel works. And I ended up coming up with three things that I could combine that made it look different, feel different, have a different agenda, and also tie it into my original one in a way that if you never saw mine, it would still work. But if you had and you go, oh, okay, now I see, that I wanted it to be a hopefully a wonderful surprise.
Yeah.
And it would be a chance to kind of come back, and I wanted to do, like a flashback from that, from the movie in that scene. Whether Paramount would ever give me the rights to do that, or whoever's going to own the rights, at this
Mm.
point it's so convoluted. And I offered Sean Cunningham the script to see it after all the dust had settled, and he said, yeah, yeah, I'd love to see it, but I tell you right
Mm.
now, that's nothing's going to happen for me in this whole thing for probably another 3 years or whatever. And New Line, Warner Brothers owns the title, Friday the
Mhm.
13th. So they have to be in on the thing. And I got the sense that whatever um, Victor Miller and all those rich boys were doing, and the production companies. I mean, it's Universal, it's
Yeah.
NBC, it's Peacock, and it's A24. And when I heard A24, I thought, fuck, they're going to do something good with it. They got to. Um,
Yeah.
that and they can only do TV. I mean, they cannot make a feature out of that. Sean can do a feature, but he can't right now call it Friday the 13th. He can use the mask, he can do that. And then suddenly Brian Fuller's going, no, we can do the mask too. And that was a shock to me. So there's stuff that's just very unclear of
Yeah.
exactly who can do what. But what we do know is that they are shooting Crystal Lake, that it's going to be young, Pamela and young Jason, that are part of that mix. And whether they flash forward, because I know the fans are going to be, where's the mask? Where's the mask?
Yeah.
So
Well,
we'll see. I mean, like Bates Motel, who I thought they did a great job at making that work, and
yeah.
I didn't go look at Bates Motel until uh, James Sweet and I started working on the Diary of Pamela Voorhees, because once I saw I wasn't getting anywhere with Jason Never Dies, I said, look, Victor's going to kind of, I think, do this thing. Let's do your idea about showing the birth of Jason, and let's do the first 10 years of mom and son together and end it with them arriving at Crystal Lake. And basically it's, we're going to hear it through her going from a sociopath to a psychopath, what
Mm.
she's writing in her diary, and how the kills get more and more violent the more defensive and more out there she gets about her son. And the same thing, it's like I can't do shit because they got their own plan and their own
Yeah.
agenda. They don't want to see any of it. They did. It's like they don't want me to come back and say, no, no, that was mine. You ripped off, because it's so easy to be copying things that you don't know the other person has already
Yeah.
thought of in that direction. So I'm sitting on two projects now that I can do nothing with. So I went, you know what? Let it go make your own thing. And so that I still have the rights and I don't have to keep begging to try to go, do you want to at
Yeah.
least look at it? I mean, we have it
Uh,
storyboarded, we've got so much stuff on it. Really, I mean, again, in all humility, really some cool stuff. And I tried to write Jason Never Dies from sitting in the audience at the theater watching what was on the screen that the fans around me would be responding to,
yeah.
taking that approach to it, that this is something the fans are going to love. I don't think they really care about that from that standpoint. Of course, they want the old fans to love it. They don't want anything bad to be said
Yeah.
about it. But they're really trying to go for a new generation, that this will be, their Jason, their Pamela, which is what can happen, that
I,
the
I
other.
mean, I think most fans are open to the TV show to see what they do with it. Um, but we'd all love to see you involved because, again, your Jason movie is, I would say, by far the most popular movie. So we'd love to see you involved somehow. And also, just like a movie, it's like they're sitting on 12 Friday the 13th movies. The next one will be number 13.
Yeah.
So to not complete that, at least get that 13th movie, it's like I don't know. I think Friday fans are very thirsty for a movie. TV shows coming though, so we'll see how it is and everything. But some horror shows, some horror franchises have done very well on TV. Some have been misses, it seems. It depends how they approach it, how they do it.
Yeah.
But a movie, and especially like I said, the ideas you've had sound fantastic. So I hope hope we get a version of that, whatever format we can get that story would be amazing. So um
Yeah,
so
but I'm as I said earlier, I don't care about anybody other than the audience. And I know after, you know, three, almost 4 decades of talking with people, of meeting them, of looking at the enthusiasm in their eyes. And I think about when I was a kid talking about Frankenstein, Dracula, I'd give
mm,
anything to meet James Whale or any of those people that made those things. Or
yeah,
this was she played this little small part. Oh, it's so great to meet you. How much is your autograph? $100. Here you go. To
yeah,
see that
yeah,
coming at us, and of course CJ is the king of it now because he's like the definitive Jason for many of them. Kane is still the most popular because he's done the most of them, but there's that enthusiasm. It's like I want to please that audience. I don't
yeah,
want them to be disappointed. I want them to go, this is exactly what I was hoping it would be. And it's not so much trying to do something different as much as is taking it in a way that it surprises you. I
yeah,
didn't think that was going to happen. And that element of surprise to me is the key factor. If people love the new Crystal Lake, great. It's going to benefit everybody. They'll bring back the movies, they'll do all the stuff. If it doesn't work, then it'll be like, the grumpiness. Oh, it's not as good as what the originals were.
mm,
But it doesn't seem at the moment they're trying to go down that route. They're really doing the early days like the Bates Motel did. And we'll see how many people, are hoping to see Jason and how quickly
yeah.
they get to that.
It's a direction, but they could also look at you see how big the that Halloween trilogy that came out, Halloween 2018.
Yeah.
It was, I think, the second biggest box office slasher, and that's a built up thing of people wanting to see Michael Myers in theaters. That feels like a
Mhm.
very specific thing. So I think Jason has the same demand. They just have to tap into it. But Jason, I mean, we said it's 45 years since the first one. So outside of Michael, I don't know if there's any other horror franchise that has that long lasting longevity, staying power. The fans are still passionate. People
Yeah.
still want to discuss every bit and piece of each sequel. So, and you
Yeah, I mean,
saw,
all your knowledge impresses the hell out of me. Your questions impress the hell out of me that you're thinking that much about this, which is a huge compliment to the franchise, and certainly for me who, did one, it's like, I love that people are thinking about this more than, yeah, that
Yeah.
was fun. Let's go get a pizza. Um,
There's a lot of us out there, and it's mainly just, you know, we want to find a community of other horror fans, discuss things, and if we get an opportunity to like these burning questions, get an opportunity to ask someone like you, it's a lot of fun, and that's also you see the popularity of all the cons. People,
oh
again,
yeah,
you guys are all heroes for us because like literally every Friday 13th, somebody in the world is watching your movie, so it's like you got to put that
yeah.
in perspective. So it's an amazing thing. So did you just to go back? I don't know if I asked you this. Immediately after part six, was there like a like did they want you to do a part seven, or
Oh
were they
yeah.
already heading in like the Jason versus Carrie direction that they ended up with, or were they like, hey, do you want to continue on with this from part six?
They did, and I was really taken aback because I remember, I went into the theater thinking. I mean, we did a preview where we brought the audience to Paramount to sit, and watch the movie, and they had been waiting in the hot sun from 7 o'clock in the morning till 7 at night when the screening was, getting toasted beyond belief.
Yeah.
So by the time they came into that theater, it was like a mob.
Mm.
And like the protests in downtown Los Angeles. But it was like a positive. We want to see him. We want to see him. And from the time that Paramount logo came up and the first note of the music, they went into a roar that never stopped for that
Mm.
90 minutes. I couldn't hear one word of dialogue. I could, they were just talking and partying. So when it was all over, Frank Mancuso came over to me and he goes, "So what'd you think?" I go, "I don't know what to think. I couldn't hear a bloody thing. Did they like it?" He goes, "You kidding me? They
Yeah.
loved it. We need three more kills." What? Yeah, I want to put three more kills. I said I got 13 in there, Frank. I wanted to play
It's
the number
it's
and all
perfect.
that.
Perfect.
But
13 kills.
he goes, "Think it up. Think up something. I don't care what, but we need three more kills." And okay, and then I came back with, "Oh, wait a minute, where are we going to get the budget?" You came in well enough under budget. We can shoot here in Los Angeles and do three more kills. You just got to figure out what it is. So since I knew that we weren't going to do the father, so I had the caretaker, there, the kill. And then I thought, all right, well, we can't go to another location. We've got to still be in that same woodsy thing. So I came up with, I thought, not a particularly brilliant thing of some guy going on a romantic evening and proposes to his girl, but I wanted people that also kind of had a sense of humor. And Roger Rose, very funny guy.
Mm.
So pulled him in. And then when it got to the kill, I went, I do that. I don't know. I love the fact that an alcoholic would die by his whiskey bottle in the neck. And of course, we were actually saw more of the blood coming out the end of the bottle that was cut.
Yeah.
But with them, to run the spear through the two of them and some blood coming out, of the mouth of her. It didn't, to me, that wasn't as good as the rest of it was. But,
Yeah.
it's like, get rid of them quick, fast, and move on,
Yeah.
fulfill, Frank's wishes. But it was, again, that was, to me, it's like, okay, I've really thought this out and did as much as I could to it. So the day after it opened and it was getting the kind of reaction that it was getting, he goes, "Okay, let's talk about part seven." And
Mm.
so, "What do you have in mind?" He goes, "It's up to you." I go, "Frank, I don't have a bloody idea, or a
Mm.
non-bloody idea. I literally kind of put everything. I really would need some time to think about that." He goes, "That's fine. Jason meets Freddy." So what?
Mm.
Jason meets Freddy. I said,
Okay.
"That's a seriously, how are you going to do that? You're Paramount. That's New Line." He goes, "I'm working on it. Give me a week. Are you interested?" And I go, "Well, my first reaction is Freddy exists in a dream realm. Jason exists in the real realm. He's
Yeah.
unstoppable. Freddy, I don't know who would win, but yeah, all right. If you can get it, it certainly is Frankenstein meets the Wolfman for me as a horror geek. So yeah, let's see what happens." So he comes back a week later and says, "No, they're not going to go for it.
Mm.
So what other ideas do you have?" And just off the top of my head at that moment, I said, "You guys had Cheech and Chong, right?" "Yeah." "Cheech and Chong meet Jason." And he
Oh,
starts
wow.
laughing. And I said, "Abaddon Skull met Frankenstein. We still make it scary, except we put at the, you know, in the middle of all this, their humor." And he
Yeah.
goes, yeah, but it's a different audience. I said, no, it isn't, Frank. They
No, I don't
smoke
think
the
so.
same weed, they drink the same wine. You
Yeah.
know, they're going to be just as excited about Jason as they would be about Cheech and Chong.
That would have been an event film, I think,
Yeah,
100%.
but he
So
just couldn't see it, as being a reality. And I saw it so clearly, but I had to kind of, let it go. Years later, when it came up in some interview, it suddenly kind of went viral, and it even got to Cheech and Chong going, "Yeah, we would like that." So,
mm. did,
but
did you
that was the extent of it.
did you did you keep up with the rest of the sequels after yours in terms of like, Seven, and we're going doing Manhattan, Jason Goes to Hell? Did you kind of follow it along the way, like just like as a fan, or was it kind of like after Jason Lives, it kind of because obviously back then it wasn't like the same thing with cons and things like that. It was, and the
Yeah.
internet wasn't as big, so it was probably easier just to like get distance and move on to the next thing. But was Jason still sort of a part of your life, like in the '90s and like the 2000s, or was it kind of just something, when fans come up and talk to you, but it wasn't like really in your immediate peripheral the way it is now, for example?
Yeah, when the convention started and all that, that was like surprising to me, because you got to remember, in those days the only fan crazy conventions were Star Trek. So there was like,
Mm,
the
yeah.
Trekkies, and that was kind of a joke. These
Mm,
guys, and they dress up and well, now, the cosplay thing is, to me, more incredible than the guests and the celebrities they have, because you
yeah.
go, did you do that makeup? Oh my God. When I was
Yeah.
over in Germany, these outfits were unbelievable. I mean, it was like top designers had made these things or something. The imagination, things that weren't, based on another movie, just original concepts and things. And I went, I love this. I love that the fans went, oh, you're not going to give me Jason? We're going to make our own then, and we're going
Yeah.
to pay for it. And these guys who always want to make movies, who love it, they're going to make the movies. And it was
Yeah.
like, we're going to look back at this period and saying this is a whole different type of cinema, where the fans are
Yeah.
making the movie and deciding what they would like in it. And of course, they don't benefit. Nobody benefits from it. If they
The
don't show that every penny that was given went up on the screen,
the
they're in trouble.
the
But
fan films have 100% like kept the passion, kept the fans like satisfied during this huge break. The fan films have been like an absolute blessing.
yeah,
Just like getting Jason in some form, and a lot of them are like really well done. So it's
yeah,
like it's been great. And yeah, these days it's like you can like on your own make a quality film. Like it's,
yeah.
with technology these days, it's not like the same budget restraints you had back in the day, it seems. So that's been amazing.
But yeah, no, I went back and I saw all the films at least once, in the theater. And then as they've, gone on TV, or you get the box set, which is
Mm,
incredible, the Shout Factory thing, that, then you want to, hear what they say about, the people who made them, what they say about it, and, the commentaries and all that. So you slowly kind of catch up, because I mean, to sit down and watch that thing is probably about a year of your life. There's
yeah.
so much stuff in there, which is amazing. And they were good enough to come to me and say, is this the way you wanted it to look? Is this the way you wanted it to sound? So I could tweak that, Scream Factory one that I couldn't with the other ones, where things are too bright or too grainy or whatever. So
Yeah.
I was very pleased with that. But each one of them had something that I went, well, that's good. But in general, I just felt this desperation of, we got to come up with some gimmick with the
Yeah.
Jason thing, and that didn't seem right to me, on a lot of levels. That it's just like, if you buy the gimmick, if it's Jason meets Carrie, or Jason goes to outer space, or Jason goes to Manhattan. And I know Rob Hedden, who did the Jason Goes to Manhattan, and I know he had a script that was not what we saw on the screen. It was in Manhattan,
Yeah.
and that boat trip was very short. Then when they realized they couldn't get those locations, too expensive, it had to be, Jason Goes on a Cruise.
I, I
So
I feel like on rewatches, you adjust your expectations. You're like, okay, this is mostly on a cruise, and then you can get the value out of it. It's still a fun slasher on a
yeah,
boat, but on the first watch, your expectations are Manhattan. Where's Madison Square Garden? Where's
yeah,
Manhattan? So it is. I could, yeah, but also it's like if you're gonna go with that idea, then it's like it feels like you have to have the budget to like, yeah, to actually do it. Otherwise, you're setting the audience up for disappointment at that point, right? So
Yeah.
Alice Cooper being a part of Jason Lives, that was basically my understanding is that I guess someone from the studio had like asked if like, hey, would you like him to do something for the movie? And that's something that stands out big time about Jason Lives. I mean,
Yeah.
still on my gym playlist is Teenage Frankenstein. So
Yeah.
I always get a kick out of that. Man Behind the Mask, amazing. But through that though, it sounds like you didn't actually get a chance to really like sit down with Alice Cooper and kind of like discuss the music or discuss anything. It was all kind of kept separated.
Yeah, well, when you make a film before you have a composer, I mean, I had all of Harry's other music that we were temping, putting in places, just use a little
Mm,
this, use that. But as I told Harry, I don't want the same score that you always do. I want this to feel gothic. And he put in that, and I always forget the name of it, but that dun 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 dun
mm,
dun dun, which
yeah.
is a very classic piece, and he wove that through. It's his favorite score because it literally, it's a mashup of
With the when
classic
you have
Harry.
the backdrop, like the full moon and the woods and all that, it's perfect
Yeah.
for that scenery too. So
So I mean that as I said, we kind of pieced it together, and then I just started putting, since I was a rock and roller, putting in stuff that seemed appropriate. And of course, we were in the age of metal, so it was AC/DC, it was
mm,
uh, Alice, was in there, and Black Sabbath, Ozzy. I mean, so I temped with all that stuff in there. So then Frank Mancuso came back to me and said, you've got Alice in there. Are you a fan? And I go, yeah. I mean, I've yet to see his act as Alice, but I certainly know him from the old days and stuff. And I go, let me see what we can do on that. So they came back and said, yeah, Alice actually wants to write a song. And I go, oh, that's great. Is there any way I can get like two other songs? Well, let's
mm,
find out. And came back with Hard Rock Summer and Teenage Frankenstein. So, I had an Alice Cooper soundtrack as far as I was concerned.
awesome.
And as a result, many times people call this, the rock and roll Friday the 13th, because the music, and I'm No Animal, that was in the camper thing, that again, what's their name? Felony, I think, was the group that did that. All
Mm,
that stuff to me just had the right vibe of the period
yeah.
and were appropriate, for the movie. Um, so yeah, it's like the fact that we still have not connected, and so
You
many
gotta
times
you gotta make
it's,
that happen, man. Yeah.
yeah,
There's gotta be a
I'm
reason there.
trying.
Um, Man, we have to eventually sometime do a part two because I actually want to get into more One Dark Night. We didn't get a chance to talk about Sometimes They Come Back, which me and my friend just watched that like about a month ago and got a big kick out of that. Also, I do want to hear more about your experiences also on both Freddy's Nightmares and the Friday 13th TV show. So you got
Yeah.
to come back on and do a part two sometime for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Well, you're a joy to talk to, man. I because you know your stuff.
oh,
You're
thank you.
smart about it. There's no geek here. There's
Well,
intelligent horror fan, and I love that.
well, Tom, I'll be honest. You're my first interview, so I was very nervous at the beginning. So that probably came across, but you're my first interview.
Well,
Uh, but hopefully, first of many. But we'll see. But
yeah.
um, I guess one final thing. So there's you can help solve this. I mean, there's a debate from Halloween fans that maybe Michael Myers could take out Jason. We need somebody, an authority figure from the Jason side, to let us know their opinion. Does Michael have any kind of chance against Jason? I don't
There
know.
were a couple of, I don't know if they were brothers or something. They're just friends, but there's a thing online of Jason meets Michael Myers. I don't know if you've seen it. It's on
I haven't.
YouTube.
Okay.
Try to look it up, because these guys were great. I mean, they had, like, a fight that really kind of made sense, and how the blows were, how long somebody would be down before they get back up again. And I
Oh,
thought, well, these guys really did it well. And it's just a little tiny short. But from my standpoint, I'm always going to first and foremost say, if it wasn't for Michael Myers, if it wasn't for John Carpenter, none
yeah.
of us would have jobs doing what we ended up doing. And John, still, I can watch that movie and just go, this is
Oh, yeah.
great, because it's so simple and, easy to understand, and yet terrifying, and yet next to bloodless when it gets down to it. So I'm always want to say that I would like to see Michael win, but when it gets down to
Yeah.